Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Little Rock, where love is our teaching and service is our prayer. I'm Gene Miley, and I am your PA for today, and also your board president, and also a member of the choir, and also a human being, so there you are. If you're a newcomer, we're glad you've chosen to worship with us and hope you come back. While you're here, please stop by our guest table out in the foyer to fill out a guest card, pick up some information about our church. I now invite our illuminator, Darren Ashcraft, to come forward to light the chalice and lead us in our affirmation of covenant, which is printed in your order of service.
I light this chalice with these words. Open our eyes to see what is beautiful. Open our minds to learn what is true. Open our hearts to love one another. Please join me in saying the affirmation of covenant, saying, love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other.
If you've heard me tell a Nasr-ed-Din story before, you know that I always introduce it by telling about that gate at his tomb, that perfect symbol of the kind of character Nasr-ed-Din is. As you heard, Alice Kelsey likewise used it to introduce her collection of Nasr-ed-Din stories retold for children. That gate is not just a story. If your travels ever take you to Turkey, it is possible to visit the real gate in the real village of Akşehir, which each year from July 5th through 10th hosts the International Nasr-ed-Din Hoca Festival. The festival is international because these folk tales are not confined to Turkey. If it is true that they began as a schoolmaster's punishment 500 years ago during the reign of Tamerlane the Great, the Mongol Turkic conqueror whose empire spanned from the Turkic lands of Central Asia down into northern Italy and on through Pakistan to the sea and then westward across Iran into the Caucasus and parts of Turkey, Syria, and Iraq. Then early on, during the century or so that empire lasted, these stories may have spread from Akşehir at its far western frontier into many cultures and via the Silk Road as far east as China. Later, when the Ottoman Empire expanded from Turkey westward, Nasr-ed-Din stories blended with Arabic tales about a similar character called Joha and migrated cross-culturally into Balkan and Slavic lands as well. They were known from sea to sea, from the Atlantic to the Pacific, but in the opposite direction from the one that phrase normally evokes for us, and covering more than twice the distance. From New York to San Francisco is about 3,000 miles. From Gibraltar to China is about 7,000. Kelsey published Once the Hoja in 1943, and 11 years later published a second book of Nasr-ed-Din tales she collected in Iran, titled Once the Mullah. She had encountered Turkish folk culture at first hand doing humanitarian work, relief work, with her husband after World War I, They got married in 1919, and that's how they spent their honeymoon. She worked there caring for children orphaned in the war, while he engaged in agricultural relief work mainly. They did the same thing after World War II in Athens. And in 1952 and 53, she went to live in Iran specifically to collect stories there. Now, she was not the first to translate Nasr-ed-Din tales into English. A generation earlier, a retired British diplomat who spent more than 30 years in Southwest Asia, Henry Dudley Barnum, had published a collection of 181 of these tales. Kelsey published 50 between her two books. I know of only one other collection in English with 111 stories, translated by George Borrow, a 19th century British linguist with an amazing talent and passion for learning languages. He knew about 100 languages. And this was published after his death in 1884. Barnum mentions that collection of Borrow's in the introduction to his collection, and I found a reprint of Borrow's collection. Most of Borrow's renderings are very brief, concise versions, for example. One night, the Hoja dreamt that he was given 9 silver coins, whereupon he said, "Oh, now pray, make them up 10. Whereupon he said, "Oh, now, make them up 11. And then presently, a dispute having arisen, he awoke and saw that in his hand was nothing. Thereupon, closing his eyes anew and stretching out his hands, said, well, I shall be content with 9. Henry Barnum actually told that one even more concisely. He left out the line about 11 silver coins, but I think Borrow was right to leave that in. Heightens the drama. Barnum reported that for political reasons, there were not more than about 50 Nasr-ed-Din's tales in print in Turkish until 1909, when a collection of some 380 of them appeared. Its editor stated that he had devoted many years to collecting the tales, but in view of the great difficulty in obtaining permission to publish them, he had laid them aside, waiting for better times. Then, directly after the Turkish Revolution in 1908, he had made an appeal to the public for well-authenticated versions. Many in his book are followed, in the Turkish edition, are followed in footnotes stating the authority on which the stories were given. Barnum said that he had been obliged to reject a good many, some because they are uninteresting and some because their crudity offends against the good taste, or their humor depends upon a play of words which may amuse those who know Turkish but loses all point in translation. Here's one from Barnum's book. One day the Hoja went to the Turkish bath and, finding that he was quite alone, began to sing a song. He began to think that he had rather a fine voice. And he said to himself, I can sing so nicely, I ought to let my people hear me. When he had finished his bath, he went straight up to the minaret, as it was already midday, and so he went to recite the call to prayer. And as he did so, a man called out from the street, "Shut up, you clown! What do you mean by shouting the call to prayer in that ugly voice?" The Hoja leaned over the parapet and said to him, if some charitable person would only build a Turkish bath up here, you would soon see what a pretty voice I have. That's for all of us who like to sing in the shower. Nasr-ed-Din's role as a leader in the mosque features prominently there, but more to color the context than the character. That's typical. The context varies from one aspect of village life to another, from tale to tale. Nasr-ed-Din's character is consistent: whimsical, mischievous, wisely foolish, foolishly wise. Sometimes the foolishness is a bit hard to believe. Take, for instance, the time the Hoja was walking on a road outside in the countryside, and he had walked so long and grown so tired, and surely, he thought, he had died. He lay down and waited a long time. But no one came walking by to discover him there and to take his body into town. He was very much annoyed. And at last he got up and went home to tell his wife how and where he had died, and having done so, returned to that fatal spot. His wife ran to tell the neighbors, crying bitterly and tearing her hair, that the Hoja had died out on, his body was lying out in the open country. The neighbors were very much distressed and sympathetic, asking her where and when it had happened and who had brought her the news. The strange thing is, she said, it was the Hoja himself who brought me word. And then he went back to the place where he died. That was the strange thing. Another time, the Hoja climbed up a tree and began to cut the branch he was standing on. A man below saw what he was doing and called out, "Hello there, what are you doing? You're going to fall." At that very moment, the branch snapped, and down he came with a crash. Immediately, he jumped up and rushed after that man. "My word, young fellow, you're clever." Having caught up with him, he said, "If you knew I was going to fall, surely you can tell me when I will die. Please tell me." Taken aback, but thinking quickly, the young man gave a cryptic answer. "Put the wood from that branch on your donkey's back, and as he goes uphill, he will throw up his heels. When he does, the wood will fall on you, and it will half kill you. When he does it a second time, it will be all over for you." And then the man hurried on his way. The first time the donkey threw the wood off onto him, the Hoja indeed felt half dead. The second time he collapsed. "Alas," he cried, "I am a dead man," and gave himself up for lost as he lay on the ground. People from the villages nearby came upon him, lying there, apparently lifeless. They gathered around him, saying to one another, "This poor fellow is dead." Then they brought a coffin and put him in it. As they carried him to town, the road divided before a deep, muddy swamp. The villagers could not decide which way to go. And they began to talk it over together. Their debate went on a long time. Before at last the Hoja popped his head out of the coffin and, pointing with his hand, said, "When I was alive, I used to go that way, but you do just as you like." Here, the donkey had only a bit part, but in some tales, he has a starring role. For example, the Hoja took his donkey to market and handed it over to a broker for sale. A customer came forward and, wishing to find out its age, tried to look at its teeth. The donkey at once bit him on the forehead, and he drew back with an oath. Then another customer came and tried to lift its tail, and he got a kick in the shins and went off limping and swearing. The broker now came to the Hoja and said, "It is no use, sir. No one will buy the donkey. It bites and kicks whenever it gets a chance." "I know," said the Hoja. "As a matter of fact, I did not bring the donkey here in order to sell him, but to let all good Muslims see and understand what I have to put up with." Some of the stories involve a trick, either one the Hoja plays on someone else or one someone else tries to play on the Hoja. One of my favorites is about a group of young boys who are sitting on a riverbank with their legs in the water, and they see their teacher, the Hoja, coming up the road, and they decide to play a game. As he approached, they began to cry out, "Where is my foot?" "Where is my foot?" cried another. "That's not my foot, it's Hussein's," cried a third. The boy nearest the Hoja as he came near, called out, "Oh, Hoja, you've come just in time. Our feet have gotten all mixed up." Another cried, "I told you it would never do to crowd together like this with our feet in the water." "Wait a moment," the Hoja said calmly. "I'll soon sort this out and get each of you back his own foot." So saying, he thrust his walking stick into the water amid their feet. They all screamed and jumped out of the water and onto the bank, each with his own feet restored to him. Now, that gate in Akshay here is not the only monument to Nasr-ed-Din. In the city of Bukhara in Uzbekistan, there is a statue of Nasr-ed-Din riding his donkey backwards, inspired by this tale. One day, as the Hoja was riding to the mosque to give a lesson, he sat on his donkey with his face to the tail, his pupils walking behind. And they asked him why he made himself so uncomfortable riding in that fashion. He answered, "Well, you can see that if I rode facing forward, I would be turning my back on you. If, on the other hand, you were to walk in front, you would have to turn your backs on me. I think riding this way is more polite." Here it is not unbelievable foolishness or a clever trick, but a small sacrifice made to show respect that is the takeaway. Folk tales like these are often about taking time to do what takes time to make a difference, or giving others the grace we would receive. They remind us through memorable examples, positive or negative, always humorous, that it is our relationships, not our property, that is our treasure. One last tale. One Friday morning, long after the Hoja's death, a crowd of people had assembled for the midday service in the old mosque in Akshay here, when suddenly a figure appeared at the main entrance looking exactly like him, with the same smiling face and familiar quaint costume. "Good people," he cried, "I have such a strange thing to tell you. I had just performed my ablutions and was going to lock the door of my grave when whom do you think I saw? Nasr-ed-Din Hoja. There he was, as large as life. It was his face and the same comical expression, and he was wearing those funny clothes of his. He was sitting astride his coffin, looking about him. And he said to me, 'Go and tell the people at the big mosque to come and see me. If anyone fails to come, it will be to his peril.' The people, who had implicit faith in the Hoja and were also favorably impressed by his messenger, rushed to the grave, but of course they saw no Hoja there. So they came away laughing, remembering how often they had heard their fathers and grandfathers tell them of similar tricks they had seen him play. 'You naughty Hoja,' they cried, 'you cannot resist temptation to come out every now and again and have a game. It is your little way of letting us know that you are always with us.' They returned to the mosque and arrived to find that while they were away, the dome had disappeared. And someone was heard to say, 'God is great, and the Hoja is his messenger.'" That story, I think, sums up why these tales are so cherished. When we are wise enough to laugh at our own foolishness, it can indeed save lives. And when we take time to do what takes time to have effect, we can indeed save the world. These paradoxical tales of wise foolishness or foolish wisdom keep that humble truth before us in a spirit of love and joy. May they and their spirit continue to cross borders. Amen.
Please remain standing. I invite Darren to come back up and extinguish our chalice. We join together, saying our closing words, saying,
Go out into the world in peace, have courage, hold on to what is good, return to no person evil for evil, strengthen the faint-hearted, support the weak, help the suffering, honor all beings.
And may laughter keep you wise.